Technical questions answered. Sandy here from Ask the Pool Guy. We get questions all the time from our website, online presence, YouTube. We can often answer them in-house. However, when they get a little bit more technical, Matt has become my go-to guy, which I'm pretty sure he has realized, because I'll send him some questions and they're often very complicated. And I'll say, here's what a customer sent in. Do you have any thoughts, any theories? And he usually comes back with the spot-on answer. So what is your history in the pool industry and why do you know so much about water chemistry?
I've actually been in the industry since 1993, and I've worked in all aspects of it, both as a retailer, service company, distributor, and vendor. And all that time it's been mostly in the chemistry part of it. I've actually probably done 10,000 water samples, and I was the chemical specialist for a major distributor for 17 states and all of Canada for about 10 years. So it's in my blood.
Okay.
And I'm a geek, so
well, that helps.
Chemistry geek.
Yeah. My other question for you is, knowing the chemical side of the industry, I was just talking about what I heard in a training once, that you don't have to put on the label of a pool chemical what is inside of it. So my advice was, if it's hazardous, I know that has to be marked.
Yes, if it's hazardous.
But my advice then is consumers should find the brands that they know and trust, because you can get to the chemical makeup of what's in products, which I sometimes go to look at when I'm fielding these questions or I want to know more. But yeah, what is the status of regulating swimming pool chemicals, and why is it not required to put what's in them or the active ingredient?
So the only time you have to put an active ingredient in there is if it's hazardous or regulated by the government. So when it's not, you can have a proprietary blend and say, not say anything about it because it's not hazardous. The problem is, or the biggest issue would be, is using a brand that you trust or a pool store that you trust, because if you don't know what the chemical makeup of the stuff is. So it's kind of like if Sandy and I were talking about how to get to Indianapolis from Michigan. I might say to go one way and she might say to go the other way. Well, you can't listen to half of mine and half of hers. You have to follow one way. And the great thing about having a retail store that actually knows what they're doing is that they sell you the right stuff. So
yeah, that is well said. If there is something in a product and it's not hazardous, why does it matter that it's in the product? Well, to me it would matter because you need to know what will react with something else. Maybe the ingredient itself isn't harmful, if you smell it or if it gets on your skin, that's fine. But when you put it in that water and it mixes with everything else that you have going on, what kind of a chemical reaction are you going to create? And are you going to turn your pool purple? That's...
Yeah. Well, actually, what I was thinking when she asked the question is, well, you have to think about what's in the water, right? Because everyone just kind of looks at the water and says, well, it's clear, it's good, But the fact of the matter is that there's a lot of stuff on all the swimmers that swim. And so all that stuff washes off, so you just kind of think of what kind of like heebie-jeebies are in there. And so when you're talking about having the right stuff and the right amount of stuff, you want to make sure that those heebie-jeebies don't affect you or the other swimmers, and especially if you have like little kids and stuff like that. So you need to kind of know what's in that so that you don't have a cesspool of bacteria that you're swimming in, even though it's clear.
Right. So one of the other questions we get, that I field this question, but I'd like to see what Matt's response is, maybe it'll improve mine or add some information, is, so somebody's using a chemical feeder and they put tablets in it and they've used tablets for the last 20 years, and then all of a sudden they have issues. The chlorinator is clogging up, the pool's not sanitizing. I have a theory, but I'd like to hear Matt's. What happens when, I know what I'm doing, and then all of a sudden I'm having all these issues? Oh, by the way, I just bought this bucket of tablets from the cheapest place I could find it, online or a big box store. What happened?
Not all chlorine's the same. So a lot of the chlorine, especially the domestic chlorine, is actually put together with compression. And so when those dissolve, they 100% dissolve, and there's no anything left over, no residue. The stuff that you get from the import is not the same. That stuff is actually held together by a binder, and that glue does not dissipate. And so that glue tends to bunch together. It's kind of like if you see that black line of gook around the top of your water or in your skimmer, or even worse in your chlorinator, and it's almost like you can undo the thing and then put your... Okay, so that's gross, right? That's think about all the stuff that's that you do that you would not want to swim in. That's kind of what that is. It's a organic glue that's gross. So
Yeah.
so if you've been using domestic stuff or good, like high-powered chlorine for a long time,
Maybe slightly more expensive.
well,
Likely.
it's well, you know what? It's like, well, pay me now or pay me later. The chlorine is slightly more expensive, but it's more effective. It works better, and it doesn't leave a nasty residue. Well, then you don't have to sit out there on a Sunday afternoon scrubbing your tile, thinking, well, I saved $3.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so that's a funny face.
That was my answer, yet he said it a lot better, a lot more eloquently.
I don't
Also,
know about that.
when we get those questions online, we often refer people to videos, or that's a question I get a lot, so my answers become pretty short. Now I'm going to attach your answer because then they can learn more. Launch Pepper. Matt helped launch Pepper, so tell us about Pepper and why does it matter?
Well, when you have a salt pool, a lot of people have this idea that, well, I have a salt pool, I don't have to do anything. You don't do anything in the ocean, it looks nice. Well, the fact of the matter is that when you have a salt pool, all you're really doing is generating chlorine, and that's it, nothing else. And so a lot of people think, well, I don't need anything because I have a salt pool. Well, when you're generating chlorine, you also generate a very high pH, which then in turn has a whole bunch of scale, which then makes your cell not last very long. And so it's kind of like a vicious circle. The way that Pepper does is Pepper disrupts that circle and makes it so that your salt pool is as easy as you thought it was going to be when you got it. Does that make sense?
It does. What's in it? What's in Pepper?
A proprietary blend.
We pegged that. So,
Perfect.
so that
Well,
is
let
that's
me
the
answer.
that's
I'm
the
gonna answer
answer.
that, though.
And I
Okay.
did also get you to answer that once
Yeah.
because I wanted to know. Like, I don't need the chemicals that are in it. I wanted to know there's different things in Pepper that have different
Yes.
features. So what are those?
So as part of the proprietary blend, what we have is we have two different descalers. We have an oxidizer, a phosphate remover, and a clarifier. So those all together take all of the problems that you would normally have at a salt pool out because we proactively treat it. We create an oxygen-rich environment that's actually nicer for not only the environment, but for the swimmers and your equipment and your pool and all that. But it also extends the life of the cell.
So your take on zinc anodes, because there are some builders who put them in on every pool. There are some builders who say, I never add a zinc anode ever and we're fine. What are your thoughts?
Is this going to be on film? I don't think you need a zinc anode.
Okay. How
That's
come?
my personal thoughts. Well, if you are treating everything the proper way and you don't have other outstanding issues, like stray current and all that other stuff, zinc anode isn't that important. I mean, you can use it; it's a good insurance policy. But I have people in my family that have salt pools that have never used them. I have friends that have salt pools that have never used them, and they don't have any issues at all. But I think it all matters on whether there's stray current, what the makeup water is, and whether the pool's bonded correctly and all that.
Okay. Metals in water. So we live in an area of the country that has the highest iron content of source water ever because Home Depot sells more iron removing water softener products than I think a lot of their other locations. So does metals in the water like that have anything to do with the current in the pool when you have a salt generator?
If you have metals that are conducive to electricity, yes.
Okay.
So I don't think iron would be,
Iron
but copper
doesn't?
does.
Copper? Okay. Interesting.
I would say if you have an inherent copper, base of copper in your water, especially your fill water, then a zinc anode is more important.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
But there are products that actually will remove metals out of the water,
yes.
especially unsequestered metals. So sequestered metals are protected from causing issues, unsequestered or not. So there's products like Revive, Revive takes out copper and iron with each treatment. So if you have inherent fill water issues with metals, there's products that will take it out. There's also other products, there's like See You Later, and there's some sequestrants and stuff like that. But if you actually want to remove the metals, you can use products that will do that.
Right. So in the event that somebody has a salt generating system and they start to experience some of the effects of electrolysis and they don't have a zinc anode,
Then by all means, put one in.
put one in, or like what would you look at first in that situation to treat? Is there some kind of a source issue that Pepper would help with, or what would your
Yes.
first step be?
Pepper has a metal remover in it. So if you're using pepper on a salt pool, odds are you're not going to have any kind of staining or electrolysis issues.
Okay.
So that's another reason why, most people don't have to, because everyone that I just talked about that are on salt are on pepper, so they don't really have any issues. So
When you have salt, have pepper,
Yeah.
and you don't really have any issues.
that's right. That's right.
Let me zoom. That's it. That beautiful.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Good. Good.
What do you-
Yeah, I send all the really hard questions over to Matt.